It's been said many, many times that one of the fastest ways to start an argument is to discuss religion or politics. Some people believe that the subject of race will trigger an argument more so than religion or politics. This is the year 2000. No longer are we dwelling on the past, or are we? What is the state of race relations in the Central Savannah River area? Are we a colorblind society? If racism still exists, what will it take to eliminate it altogether? Can we sit down together to work toward a solution? Are we making any progress toward achieving better respect for people who are different from us? And finally, will there ever be a time when people of all races can live together peacefully? Grady, let me start with you.
Well, Frank, the state of race relation in this community is perhaps very little relationship. If you mean, are we together? Are we functioning as one, as a family of people, black and white? I would say the race relation is in a bad state. If you mean that we leave each other alone, we don't bother one another, then I say we have a good relationship, because that's where it is today. We are apart from one another.
Now, Grady, people work together, they socialize together, there are interracial marriages, et cetera, et cetera. Some people even go to churches together. Now, are you seriously contending that we're in a sad state of affairs as far as race relations are concerned?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. All you need to do is read the newspaper, read the letters to the editor, look at the political races. We don't vote for one another. We tend to vote along racial lines. We go to work together, but once we leave work, we go to our separate ways. You might find a smattering of people in different churches, but beyond that, I think the race relation is in a dire strait.
As a follow-up, can either one of you argue that haven't we come a long ways, I mean, from where we were, and where were we?
Most definitely. So I would agree with Grady to some extent. But race relation is just like the polls. I mean, during the Republican convention, Bush was very, very high in the polls. And as time progressed, then the gap closed between. It all depends on who are doing the polls in reference to race relation. We have come a very, very long way in Richmond County as far as race relation is concerned, but there's a long way to go. I agree with Grady is that we are not participating in the political system like we should. Why? It's because of the fact that in so many cases, we can't see the tangible results of politics, because if you're not directly involved, well, you're going to receive some type of monetary reward immediately, a lot of people would not take place in. So this is why so much apathy exists within that particular area. But in the long run, in Richmond County, we have gone from Roy Rawlings to Charles Locke. You know what I mean? From the superintendent of school. We've gone to Dr. Rump, who is over the health department. McIntyre, who is the mayor. A lot of changes have come about, but we still have a long way to go. Even on the state level, we have a black guy who was elected on the state level, which is the first black guy ever elected on the state level. So yes, we have moved in a lot of directions, but there's still a lot of room to go.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, before I move forward, let's talk a little bit about the 70s. You guys were there.
Yes.
You were there during the disturbances. I was not there. Who wants to start here? Things have changed from that, right?
Yes. You know, as years pass by, there are going to be changes, but the changes are relative to what? No, we aren't where we were in 1970, but when you ride through the neighborhoods, through what we call the bottom, no one can say that there has been improvement in that area. And what has happened, yes, there have been some blacks that have had some upward mobility, and they've moved into the upper middle class, but the gap has widened between the lower class blacks and those that are in the middle class. So there are there's a large group of people that have been left behind. And if we want to point to those 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 blacks that have made it, and ignore the masses of blacks that are still struggling and trying to get ahead.
But Grady, who's responsible for that?
Well, I
aren't
think
people supposed to help themselves?
Yes, and you're exactly right, and that is exactly what has not happened. Many have given up. Many have not taken responsibility to do for themselves what they should do. Things are much better for them, even though they are in that state today. They are much better for them than they were for me when I was coming along. The schools are better, the opportunities are more, but people aren't taking advantage of those opportunities. They're sitting back complaining about what they don't have, instead of, there's nothing wrong with addressing what you don't have, but at the same time, you ought to take what you have and make something out of it until things could get better.
Well, let's go a little further here now. You talk about how far we've come. The schools are better, et cetera, et cetera. Now, who has the responsibility of saying, okay, I want to improve my lot? What do I do to get from here with a hand out to getting up so I can help somebody else?
Well, you know, we have to take a personal responsibility. First of all, before you could seek any help from anyone else, you need to do what you can do. You have to first do for yourself, then others, and there may be others who may want to help you improve and may want to be a mentor for you, may want to provide help for you, but many have given up. They've lost hope, and they've reneged on their own responsibility.
Now look at...
And again, too, Frank, and follow up on what Grady said, is that not only, speaking of people taking initiative, the parents is going to have to take more initiative in trying to bring about some of these services that you're talking about for these young people. Let's say, like Grady, I was talking earlier before we came on the air, about a 14-year-old child. You could take a 14-year-old child, all of a sudden you put him out and say, hey, you're grown, get out on your own. And where would he go? With no directions. He has no sense, no sense of direction of where to go.
Yeah.
So the parents are going to have to begin to take more initiative in the lives of their children. Talk to black parents. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
Yes.
The government can't raise them anymore.
Yes.
The government can't raise them. The schools can't raise them. They're going to have the help of the parents. The parents are going to have to begin to discipline their children.
Yes.
No ifs, ands, and buts about it.
And we, the parents in this regard, often have held on to the philosophy that when I was coming up, I didn't have certain things, and I'm going to make sure that my children have them.
Right.
And what they've done was they've run a generation of children by providing for them everything that they want, and not teaching them responsibility that if you want things, then you have to do certain things to obtain things. You can't sit and wait for someone to give them. So they have the mentality, children have the mentality now that everybody's supposed to do for me. Mm-hmm. And they grow up with that mentality and become adults with that same mentality. And I know we came out of a generation where we didn't have much, mm-hmm. and sure we wanted our children to have things that we didn't have. But we forgot to teach them the things that we learned when we were coming up, that we take responsibility and that we work and we go out and we do those things that prepare us to acquire the things we want in life.
Now, earlier, you made the statement that racism still exists, that there's a divide
yes.
between the races now.
Yes.
Who is responsible for that? Is it the flag, the Confederate flag? Is it just simple one race hates another race? Who's responsible?
Communication. Communication is one of I think one of the greatest obstacles in race relation. It's because of the fact that we do not communicate with each other. I mean, we communicate, you and I communicate, Grady communicate, Frank communicate, yes, because we're intelligent enough to communicate. But in so many cases, a lot of people just cannot communicate with each other, and this creates a tremendous problem.
But so the key is education?
Exactly.
Well, not so much education, because some of the most educated people in the world don't get along across racial lines. And some of our leaders who are well educated don't get along across racial lines. I think it's a moral dilemma that we have. I think in religious circles, we're going to have to start practicing what we teach, and we're going to have to start practicing what we learn. We go to church on Sunday and learn how to treat our neighbors as ourselves, but Monday morning we forget that sermon. And we remember it next Sunday. But between Sunday and the 2 Sundays, we forget everything that we learned, how to get along with one another, how to treat one as you would want to be treated. Those lessons have to be put into practice rather than in theory.
But following on your comment there are people who are educated but who don't believe in any kind of religion whatsoever.
Yes.
So where are you with that?
But you are still going, those are exceptions. I would agree with that, Frank. There are exceptions to all rules. You are going to have some of the most intelligent people in the world. They will never get along with anyone. But I'm saying the basic problem here, I think over a period of time, if we learn to communicate, to respect each other's position, or their space as they call it today, respect each other's space, and I think relationship will increase.
Well, Arthur, people will tell you, and they've told me before, go back to Africa.
Well, you know, that type of person, that type of person, he's the one who needs to go back into the educational setting. Because he would realize, understand, we've never been to Africa. We don't. The only thing I know about Africa is what I read about Africa.
Well, you know, that person who's saying go back to Africa came from Europe, some other country. The only people that were here originally were the Indians. So all of us need to go back where we came from if that's going to solve the race problem.
You know, another thing I ask myself when it comes down to racism, you know, you ask yourself, especially if you talk to a white man who hates the black man, I said, what have the black man done to the white man?
Hold that thought. Want to take a break? We'll be right back right after this. When you come back, I want you to finish that, but I want you to go back and let's talk about a little bit of...
There's only one Football Friday night with Marlon Williams.
They're as dangerous as any team out there.
And John Hart.
Friday night under the lights.
30 minutes jam-packed with all the high school football highlights, cheerleaders, and fans you can stand. Except no substitutes. Football Friday night, every Friday at 11:35.
This year's Forestry for Wildlife partners are Georgia Power and Weyerhaeuser, based on their commitment to Georgia's wildlife and other natural resources. Forestry for Wildlife is a partnership between the Georgia Department of Natural Resources and Georgia's corporate forest landowners. To achieve this award, participants must demonstrate sound wildlife stewardship through their land management practices. The Georgia Department of Natural Resources is proud to honor this year's recipients.
Remember when you learned to ride a bike? How important that helping hand felt. Just to get you started. Add a little balance, letting you know you aren't alone. Sometimes you didn't even notice it was gone. You just sailed on all by yourself, knowing there'd be a hand there if you fell. You can still find that hand when you need one. The Boys Town National Hotline is there for you 24 hours a day, every day. If you or someone you know needs help, call the Boys Town National Hotline at 1-800-448-3000. They pay for the call. All you have to do is reach out, and they'll be there to help.
What happened to our most memorable mothers and daughters on the next Montel?
And we're back, and just before the break, Arthur, you were saying, you were posing a question about the white man. What
Right.
what has the black man
Yeah.
done to?
That's always my question when I hear, you know, about hate crimes and this type of thing. And I always ask, what has the black man done to the white man for the white man to hate him so much? I mean,
I can answer part of that from what I've heard.
what is that, Frank?
I've heard that, look at your jails, how they're so crowded with people of color, black people, the crimes that are being committed. You look at TV, you see a lot of young black fellas being arrested. White men say they're afraid for their daughters, for their families to be out on the streets. So that's part of it.
Oh, yes. I was going back further. I was going back to the times when our ancestors, for an example, took care of the children, we raised the children, we raised the crops, we worked in the field, we helped build their homes. We did all these good things for them. And over a long period of time, you ask yourself, look like to me, this should have been taken in consideration as well as when they're developing all of this, building up all this hatred within their souls. But like you said, yeah, I would agree with that. But again, too, those are isolated incidents, too. There are so many good things that happen in society where people don't like good things, for an example. You can put all the beautiful stuff you want in Augusta Chronicle on the front page. Very few people read about it. You put something bad on the front page, everybody's going to read about it. So you only, but the young black people, you only see the bad things about it. Very seldom you see the good things that young black men are doing.
Well, you know, you mentioned about one of the reasons why the white man hates the black man. I think when the black man...
My question was why?
Yeah,
okay.
When the black man started wanting some of the same things that the white man has, that's when the hate came in. So long as we were in slavery and we were accepting things as they were, there was less hate toward the black man. But when the black man started wanting the same job that the white man has, the same education, wants to marry the same woman that he has in some instances, then the hate started coming in. Wanted to move in the same neighborhoods, have the same type of opportunities. Hate came in. So long as the white man was on top of the black man was at the bottom, it's no reason to hate you.
Well,
if I have you down.
Well, now, there are some whites who feel that when integration occurs, that it dilutes, it weakens the race, and should marry your own kind. I don't know your take on that, but I'm not even questioning that. But all of that comes into place. So I don't know how you deal with that and get people to sit down and give each other some space.
Well, you know, we came from the old schoolhouse, all of us. I never went to school I never went to school in an integrated school. I always went to segregated school. So I didn't really come up around the white children in my community. So the way I learned them is just through, every now and then we have one or two would come to our baseball diamond, or one or two would come to our basketball court, and we were playing. We get to know them through that way. But as far as coming up with them, like Grady talking about the interracial marriage thing, you're seeing more of that now. Not only marriage by them black and white going together, because they're going through school together. And I mean, they're young people.
Yeah.
And you're going to see this, that we have no control over this. You know, we have no control over this.
So you're trying to say those who hate it need to get over it?
Well, I don't think they will ever get over it, Frank. It's in their hearts. And until their hearts are changed, it's going to be that way. Education won't change them because they are in school, they are learning. One thing I learned we go back to the 70s during the riot. During that period of time, I think we had a much better relationship with whites than we have today. Now that's a big statement to make.
Am I hearing you correctly?
That's a big statement to make, because I think we were more accepting of one another, simply because blacks were striving to come out of where they were. Look at the whites who came from north down south to participate in the civil rights movement. Right. How many whites can you get to stand up front now and support a black issue? They are not there anymore. The blacks, the young whites who were there in the 70s, now let me say this, those who were there with us in the 70s, in the early 80s, as they grew older, they became more conservative. And so they are not there anymore. They don't want to be identified with black movements and black progress.
But
So,
Grady, you're saying, and let's back up. You're saying, in essence, that we don't have any white people that will stand up with us on the black issue. Because I disagree with that wholeheartedly. There's still
generally speaking,
a lot of white people standing with us.
Yes, there are some whites that will stand up, but overall, you know, we get a barometer when we have elections. A black man is running for office. Unless that black man is a Charles Walker, okay, who is already established, who has a constituency such as the Medical College of Georgia that's going to vote for him because he's going to produce things for the Medical College of Georgia. But a black man just running, say Grady Abrams runs for office now. Grady Abrams is going to have to depend on a black constituency to put him in office. And if
It boils down to color.
Yes, and if a black constituency puts Grady Abrams in office, then Grady Abrams owes something to that black constituency. He owes something to it. Blacks who are elected to office cannot afford to get in office and act as their counterparts do. They need to produce for those who put them in office. Now, this is not to say when a black man does something for a black family or a black person, is not doing something against a white man. Okay. And that's the notion that many have, that once a black man does something for a black community, that he's doing something against a white community.
Well, Grady, what if a white man does something for a white community?
Well, nothing wrong. They do that every day. That happens every day.
Okay.
They just don't stand up and say that I'm doing something for whites. They just do it.
Okay. Okay, before we run out of time, I want you to tell me about, you saved some people. I want to hear a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that was happening. One day I will never forget. That's May the 11th, 1970. There's the day we had the ride here. And we had taped a television program, by the way, that particular day, too. And so we were coming back. So we were down on the corner at that time of 9th and Gwinnett Street, as they call it, 9th and Gwinnett Street. Now it's James Brown Boulevard and Lane Walker. And this guy, the ride was going on. I mean, it was in full blood at that time. I mean, they were riding, doing everything. So yeah, this guy comes down, the white guy comes down to the red light. And he stops at the red light. You know, rather than just running on through the red light, he stops at the red light. And all of a sudden, man, the guys turned his car over. Next thing I saw, they had a brick was beating him in his head. I mean, that was atrocious. That was one of the most things I've ever in my life seen. Yeah. And me and a guy, myself and another guy, got him and pulled him out and went into Joe Thomas' radio shop. Yeah. And, you know, we got him out of there, and actually, we did a lot to help him.
Yeah, Arthur Stewart saved his life that day.
No, I don't like to say save his life.
But what do you think would have happened had you not pulled him out?
He would have been, because, I mean, they had...
Don't be so modest, Arthur, come on.
But the ride had really got out of hand. I mean, he had got to the point where, you know, it had really gotten out of hand once he got right down on the corner of 9th and Gwinnett at that time. I mean, they were turning over cars, tearing up, when the gasoline running all down the street. I mean, you know, that's when Charlie Reed had that service station on that corner. And some people people were taking advantage of it as well. You see, then they had broken into the liquor store, liquor all over the ground, I mean, and they were drinking, and the ride had just got out of hand. And so, yes, they would have hurt the guy seriously. Yeah. But, you know, we were able to get him inside of Joe Thomas' record shop. And but I do think he lost the eye. I think the guy lost the eye.
You know,
I've
that
never
ride,
seen or heard from him again.
That ride could have been averted had the mayor at the time, Beckham, and the council had listened to some of the voices that were speaking from the black community, but they refused to listen. They didn't want to hear it. The mayor even walked out. Mayor Beckham even walked out of a council meeting one night, refusing to hear the voices of the black community. And the Tuesday morning after the ride, all all of the people who had refused to hear prior to the riot wanted to come to the table and sit and find out what do we need to do in this community to bring things about. Frank, even the Human Relations Commission was birthed out of the riot.
Exactly.
That came out of the riot, and
Charles
the manager
Walker
of this
Charles
TV
Walker's first.
station,
Right.
John Raddick, was the chairman of the first Human Relations Commission, with Charles Walker being the director.
I know I had written a proposal with U.S. Department of Labor in 1969 because I was working with not working, but I knew about the NYC program up in Atlantic City. I was working there and said, no funds available. I mean, I had written the letters extensively trying to get funding. No funds available. After the riot, money was coming from everywhere. I mean,
And that's sad. That's a sad commentary.
They were throwing money out.
Yeah.
That's a sad commentary that something has to happen before the power in this town does anything for the people who are unfortunate.
Okay, we got a minute left. I want you to go first. Where are we headed, and how do we get there to make things better?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I think everybody's going to be heading in different directions as far as race relation is concerned. But I go back to the same thing. I think if through education and communication, I think that we could bridge this gap. I definitely think we could bridge this gap. And hopefully is that our young people coming along in schools today will get a chance to know each other better.
Grady?
Frank, it's sad for me to say this, but I think the only thing that's going to change things and make race relation better is the second coming.
No, what do you mean? What do you mean?
That's it. Things are going to deteriorate. You're going to have some ups and downs, but things are moving in a downward spiral. And
you don't think that people of goodwill can come together and say, look, we're down here, we can improve our lot?
I don't think man is going to be able to solve his problems. It's going to take a higher being to end it.
You've got a lot of churches who are actively trying to promote goodwill, working with each other. You got a lot of organizations.
And they're going to, if they're taking their direction from a higher power, then I think there's hope. But if they have succumbed to what man tries to do on his own and outside of that higher power, I don't think there's much hope.
What's the biggest problem here? We got less than 30 seconds, but
the problem started in the garden.
In the garden?
In the garden. And has persisted ever since then.
So you
and
were
we'll
saying,
never get away from that, even though
this is another program. We're out of time,
yes.
gentlemen.
Yes.
Take care. We're going to have to do this again.
Yes.